These are the words Moses spoke to all Israel in the wilderness east of the Jordan, that is, in the Arabah, opposite Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab. It takes 11 days to go from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir road. In the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses proclaimed to the Israelites all that the Lord had commanded him concerning them. This was after he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, and Edrei had defeated Og, king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. East of the Jordan, in the territory of Moab, Moses began to expound this law, saying, "The Lord our God said to us at Horeb, 'You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Break camp and advance into the hill country of the Amorites. Go to all the neighboring peoples in the Arabah, in the mountains, in the western foothills, in the Negev, and along the coast, to the land of the Canaanites and to Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates. See, I have given you this land. Go in and take possession of the land that the Lord swore he would give to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to their descendants after them.' At that time I said to you, 'You are too heavy a burden for me to carry alone. The Lord your God has increased your numbers, so that today you're as numerous as the stars in the sky. May the Lord, the God of your ancestors, increase you 1,000 times and bless you as he has promised. But how can I bear your problems and your burdens and your disputes all by myself? Choose some wise, understanding, and respected men from each of your tribes, and I will set them over you.' You answered me, 'What you propose to do is good.' So I took the leading men of your tribes, wise and respected men, and appointed them to have authority over you, as commanders of thousands, of hundreds, of 50s, and of 10s, and as tribal officials. And I charged your judges at that time, 'Hear the disputes between your people and judge fairly, whether the case is between two Israelites or between an Israelite and a foreigner residing among you. Do not show partiality in judging. Hear both small and great alike. Do not be afraid of anyone, for judgment belongs to God. Bring me any case too hard for you, and I will hear it.' And at that time I told you everything you were to do." Over to Jim.
Zoe, thank you very much. Well, as we stand on the threshold of a new year, and with all the uncertainty that lies ahead, it's good to remind ourselves, isn't it, that being a Christian is not about being religious. It's about saying, I've linked hands with Jesus Christ. I'm a follower of him. And I say that because that gives us reason to get into the book of Deuteronomy. Because if there's one book that was on the bedside table of the Lord Jesus as he was growing up more than any other, it would have been this book, the book of Deuteronomy. He quotes from it more than any other book he quotes from as he went about his public ministry. We see that in the Gospels. It's clear he was formed by this book. He grew up learning this book. In a way, Jesus is the man that Psalm 1, you might know Psalm 1 famously says, "Blessed is the one whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on this law day and night." As you look at the life of Jesus and the teaching of Jesus, it was clear he had meditated on the law. And the law might refer to the first 5 books of the Bible. It certainly refers to this final book of the first 5, Deuteronomy. Oh, how I love the book of Deuteronomy, the psalmist says effectively in Psalm 119. I delight in it. And that's a rather strange thing, isn't it, to our ears when we hear someone say, "I delight in your law." I remember reading a book by Christopher Ash, Bible Delight, and he has this wonderful illustration of a school child going up to a head teacher in the playground, clutching a copy of the school rules and saying, oh, headmaster, oh, how I love your rules. They are my delight. Now, that would be a creepy thing. If someone does that, that's just weird, isn't it? That's really, really weird. But isn't that what the psalmists do when they speak again and again of delighting in the Lord, the law of the Lord? When, for instance, Psalm 19 says, the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. It's more precious than gold. It's sweeter than honey. How can anyone really say that about the law and about this book, the book of Deuteronomy? Well, it all begins with understanding what the book of Deuteronomy actually is. And this is our first point this morning as we start this new year, this new series in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is communication, not just commands. Look at verse 1 of chapter 1. These are the words Moses spoke to all Israel in the wilderness east of the Jordan. Now, in the Hebrew Bible, this book was known as These Are the Words. This was the These Are the Words book. In other words, this is a piece of communication. It's not a dry rule book, which maybe the name Deuteronomy kind of implies. Deuteronomy is deutero, second, nomos, law, second law. And that kind of doesn't really get your heart racing, does it? Deuteronomy. It sounds a bit technical, a bit like an instruction manual. Delete that from your mind and see this as These Are the Words book. Not simply commands laid down. No, it's much broader than that. It's a piece of communication that involves story and promise and poetry. And yes, commands as well. But it's a multi-layered message. It's not just a book about being told what to do. It's a These Are the Words book. And isn't that exciting? Because words are the currency of relationship. I don't know about you, but I long for words from those I love. I long to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, for them to express that to me. In fact, I can't cope when a family member or someone just goes into silent mode for a while, you know, and you might think, oh, your poor family, what an intense dad, what an intense husband was wanting to ask, hey, what are you thinking? But that's just, that's kind of all of us, isn't it? We want to know what's on your mind. Please express it. I want to know. And as we live life in this world, don't we simply want to say, God, what is on your mind as we go through what we have to go through? Please, can you explain what you're doing here? I want to know. And as we look in the world, as we live our life, it can feel like, well, there's nothing. There's no sound, no voice. It's enough really to lead you to despair. You just feel God is silent. Well, what do we have in this book? Well, we have a people who are in a particular place. They're in the wilderness east of the Jordan. I'm going to say more about this next week. But here they are in the wilderness with so much ahead of them. And what does God give them? He gives them his mind. He communicates with them by his prophet Moses. So, what are you facing in 2021? I guess we don't know. We don't know what lies around the corner. It could be cancer. It could be loneliness. Maybe we know it already. We're facing sleeplessness. We're just struggling with that, or we're struggling with too many responsibilities in our life, or a persistent sin that really no one knows about and is just dogging us. Oh, Lord, would you speak to me? Well, he has done. He's not silent. This book, the whole Bible, but the book of Deuteronomy, you could say, is just bristling with words. It's a bit like, when you got your phone and it's going ping, 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 ping. Messages are just coming in, ping, it's vibrating. That's kind of what this book is doing, or the book of Deuteronomy, ping, and when it's doing that, when your phone's doing it, you just long to pick it up. You may be having a conversation with someone, you don't, but you just want to. That's what this God is doing here. He speaks, communicates. Let me encourage you, pick it up this week. Why not get into Deuteronomy if you've got nowhere else to go? Read the next 3 chapters. We're gonna be thinking about that next week. We're doing actually the first 4 chapters just in this month alone. Why not camp out there? The truth is that God is far more ready to speak than we are to listen. If we're not hearing anything, it's not for lack of communication on his part. If there's no Bible flowing into your life, you're listening to it, hearing it explained, reading it, well, and by that I mean not just the nice bits that we know quite well with the New Testament, I mean the law too. If there's none of that, we can't expect to flourish as his people. So there we go. This is the nature of this book. It's communication and not just commands. Let's now move on to the central figure of this book, who is Moses. And Moses is a prophet and not simply a policeman, not just a policeman. Well, what do I mean by that? We'll have a look at verse 1 again. These are the words that Moses spoke. He spoke. Look at the verb. It's speaking. It's not these are the words that Moses decreed or commanded. These are the words Moses legislated. No. These are the words Moses spoke. Verse 3, he proclaims. Verse 5, he expounds the law. Look what he does. He expounds the law, saying. As one Hebrew scholar, Dan Block, said about this passage, there is absolutely no legal vocabulary in it whatsoever. Legal vocabulary is not here at this opening part of the book. Moses is not a legislator. He is a teacher. He's not a policeman laying down the law, but a pastor teaching, guiding, directing God's people. So that's what Deuteronomy is. There's very little action in the book at all. Nothing much happens. What we simply have is 3 sermons from a very unique person in salvation history. You could say the preeminent prophet in the Old Testament. Here at the end of his 120-year life, at the height of his wisdom. Deuteronomy 34:10 says, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses. That's who Moses is. That's the category of which to think about him. He's a prophet. He's a pastor. He's a preacher. And what we have in this book are 3 sermons. The first is in chapters 1 to 4. The second is chapters 5 to 28. The third, 29 to 30. And what are we doing? Well, we're looking at the first of these sermons over this month. And why is Moses preaching? Well, his life is nearly over. He's about to die, and Israel has a task to complete. They're on the edge of the promised land. We've got a map. Let's see if we can show it. Perhaps it won't be. It's not going to do the job because it's actually too small text. So I actually won't bother explaining it now. And it's my fault. It's a rubbish map. Just want to Google Deuteronomy map and just kind of get a sight of where all the different places that are mentioned here. The point is, God's people are on the verge of the promised land. They're about to go into it. I'll say more about that next time. And Moses isn't. And so we can get rid of the map now. It's as though Moses is a parent about to send his child off to university or an apprenticeship, perhaps in a different city, leaving home, and the parents are not going to join their child in that, and so they're speaking to them, saying some final words before their child heads off. And so really what Moses is doing is he's saying, look, this is how you need to press on in faith. in living distinctively for God in a land, in a place that has absolutely no knowledge of him. And when you put it like that, don't you realize, don't you see, wow, this book is hugely relevant for us, because we need just the same direction, because we're living in a world that is full of all sorts of faiths. People believe all sorts of things, and we need God's direction to know how to listen to him and live distinctively for him as we press on in faith towards the great future he has for us, towards the great new creation that we're all bound for. So why wouldn't we want to listen to this man who has seen the great moment of salvation in the Old Testament, who saw the Exodus with his eyes, who was instrumental in it, who then spent 40 years communing with God, we're told, face to face, who spent no doubt 40 years in the wilderness reflecting on that great act of salvation, of being carried through the Red Sea, of God speaking at Mount Sinai, and thinking, wow, how must this affect and shape the lives of God's people? Why wouldn't we want to listen to him? Listen to this man who laid down a form of words that could serve as a pattern of teaching for all the prophets who would come after him, which is exactly what happens as you read the prophets, as you read the rest of the Old Testament. They're all referring back again and again to this great work that we know as Deuteronomy. In that respect, it's not unlike the book of 2 Timothy in the New Testament, where a seasoned apostle with his own death just around the corner, who would experience the saving act of God in Jesus Christ, gives infallible instructions to guide all future generations of believers that would come after him. And that's a mesh of Romans, where you get the gospel and the salvation act explained with 2 Timothy, that kind of thing. So Deuteronomy is not a book of legal code. It's a work of pastoral theology given to nourish God's people. It's no wonder that Jesus quoted from it so much. It's no wonder that the psalmists delighted in it in the way they do. So let me ask you, don't you want to be pastored, shepherded by God in all the nitty-gritty areas of your life? Don't we all long for someone who's older and wiser to take us under their wing, to guide us and to mentor us? Well, God has done that in Moses. He has spoken to us by his prophets. So will you listen to him? Will you really make time to listen? Deuteronomy, communication, not just commands. Moses, a prophet, not just a policeman. Finally, law, story, not just stipulations. Just look at verse 5. East of the Jordan in the territory of Moab, Moses began to explain this law, saying, what would you expect for him to say next? What would you expect? Well, you expect him to launch in with the 10 Commandments, wouldn't you? To launch in with the laws that we know. What does Moses do? He takes them back 40 years to Mount Horeb, which is actually also named for Mount Sinai, where their life as a nation all began. That's what it was in verse 6. He says, the Lord our God said to us at Horeb. Wow! So he just gives them a history lesson before he does anything else. And that history lesson, that's why we had that longer passage read. He talks about all sorts of things, and he does it. He does it for the next 3 chapters. It's all history. Here's the point. This is not preamble. The history of God's dealings with his people is law. It's not preamble to the law. In fact, we don't really get detailed laws in Deuteronomy until you get to chapter 12. So what do you get in the first 11 chapters, which is the first third of the book? Well, you get God, through Moses, laying a very solid foundation, setting out the relationship between God and his people, upon which all the ethical instructions, when they come, is built upon. Now, I remember being so moved by this when we were, a number of us remember, we read through the Bible over the course of 3 years. I remember when it came to Deuteronomy, I thought, right, Deuteronomy, here we go. We're getting into some laws. I'm ready, come on. And just reading chapter after chapter, saying the laws, where are all these kind of detailed laws? And in Deuteronomy, you have to get to chapter 12 until you get there. So I was expecting rules. What did I hit? Well, you hit relationship. And as is the case throughout the whole of the Bible, it's always God who makes the first move in dealings with his people. He acts in mercy and grace. We just respond. Now we see glimpses of that here in our passage in all sorts of ways. I'm going to just point out 3. There are others we could have gone for, but look, let's go for the 3 most obvious. Verse 6, look what he says. He describes God as the Lord our God. The Lord our God said to us at Horeb. It's as though he's saying, look, will you see who God is? He's the one who's pledged himself to you. That is what the Lord means when we see it in the Old Testament. And on some versions of the Bible, it's in capital letters. It's a kind of expressing commitment kind of name. It's the Old Testament equivalent of the New Testament name for God, which is Father. As Christians, we've been adopted by God, and so we love to describe him as Father in our prayers. We say, Father, Father, because that's the relationship we now have. Well, in the Old Testament, the way you kind of enjoyed and reminded yourself of the commitment God had shown to you is you'd call him Lord. I mean, Yahweh was the Jewish term, but they didn't like to say that, so they said Lord, because Yahweh seemed too holy to say those words. And so that's the first sign of kind of commitment, covenant commitment that God has shown to his people. Let's see the next one in verse 8. See what he says? See, I have given you this land. That's what God said to his people 40 years earlier. I've laid it out on a plate is the kind of feel, go on, go and help yourself, go and enjoy it, and how can you go in and take possession of it? Why can they go in and take possession of it, confident that it's there for the taking, it's right for the taking? Verse 8. This is the land the Lord swore he would give to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to their descendants after them. He'd made promises to their ancestors, and those promises the Lord is intent on keeping. Even though they were made many years ago, that's what's driving everything now. The Lord makes promises, and then he keeps them. And you might say, well, hang on, how do we know God will be faithful to those promises he has kept? Well, even in our passage, we have the signs that God is faithful. He has kept his word. If you just scroll up to verse 4 there, he says in verse 4, talking about this moment that Moses is preaching to the people, this was after he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, and at Edrei had defeated Og, king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. What we're being reminded of there right at the outset is, oh wow, look at the amazing things God has already done for his people. He enabled them to win victories over the Amorite kings Sihon and Og, and that was no mean feat. If you read a bit more of Deuteronomy this week, you'll come across a wonderful little detail where we're told that the Og, king of Bashan, this is in chapter 3, I think, somewhere like that, verse 11, we're told his bed was decorated with iron and was more than 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, more than 13 foot long, 6 feet wide. Point is, huge bed, huge man. He was kind of a giant-like man, and that was the sort of the nation. They were giant-like, and the Israelites took them. They defeated them, and they did that because the Lord was on their side. So Here we have law, which is not simply stipulations, but story. Story of God's undeserved faithfulness. So full of gospel, the law. Oh, how I love your gospel. This is gospel here in the law. The story of God's faithfulness. It's why it was so right that we're looking at Deuteronomy. So what song are we going to sing? We're going to start with "Great is your faithfulness, O God, my Father. You have fulfilled all your promise to me. You never fail. Your love is unchanging. All you have been, you forever will be. All I have needed, your hand has provided. Great is your faithfulness, Father, to me." That's what we find when we get into law. So will you, as I ask myself, my busy self, my distracted self, my excuse-making self, because that's mainly the point with me, will you listen to the message of this book? It doesn't have to be Deuteronomy. For all of us, just the Bible itself is closed so much of the time. It's on one side. And we think, oh, it's discipline. I need more holiness. No. It's not about discipline. It's about desire. It's not about holiness. It's about hunger. Hunger. Let's be honest, really, guys. That's what's functioning. Do we want him? Do we see how good God is? Because if we do, if we see, wow, this is the God who made promises to me, then we'll be hungry. Then we'll be desiring to open this book up. That's what we have in law. It's like a parent sitting on the bedside of a child who, after years of love and care for that child, on the verge of something important, just wants to give a word or two of direction, and the child saying, "Nah, I'd just rather watch telly, thanks." No, can't you see? The parent has done all this for you. Will you just turn the TV off for a moment? Or think of a surgeon who has the responsibility for your ongoing condition, and that surgeon, she has operated on you. She's operated on you many, many times. She's gone the second mile. She's so clearly committed to your health, and has gone to great lengths to keeping you well. And she, so an appointment comes through for you to go and see her again in the hospital, and you think, oh, I can't be bothered. No, you're there, and you're taking notes as she's speaking. You're listening. Because she's so committed to you. That's what law is. Not a series of stipulations, but it includes a whole backstory. Backstory of God's undying love for his people. 2021, it's full of uncertainty. Of course it is. Don't listen to those who say, we just get that done and it's all going to be okay. We don't know what 2021 holds. But we do have a God who speaks. The only question is, will you listen?